Baby Boomer fans, we are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade. Grab your favorite malt or Green River, make sure you are wide awake, and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hi, folks. Thank you for joining us today. We are always grateful to see you on our 1950s Fun Chat and share another wonderful nugget of history from the 1950s.
Mm-hmm. Greetings, all. I always like to begin the program by directing your eyes to the bottom of the screen where you see www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. So please go there for much more information than you're going to receive today. There'll be some information about the book, and that little book is called While the Windmill Watched, a Slice of Rural America in the 1950s. So at that website, you'll hear more about this book, about the vendors. We have 49 vendors where the book is available. It's also available in many libraries throughout the upper Midwest. You'll also find out from where the authors are signing books or speaking. You'll find out where the events will take place and how you maybe could attend. So we also like to have you look at the bottom of the screen, or bottom of the screen, where you see a thumbs up and a subscribe button. So we ask you to take note of those too. So let us get going here. Since writing the book, Janine and I have taken a deeper interest in windmills. In this fun chat, those sturdy structures will be highlighted, each a towering intermediary between wind and underground thirst-quenching water from the aquifer below. So did you know there are at least 6 windmill museums in the United States? This chat will highlight one of them, the Kregel Windmill Factory Museum of Nebraska City, Nebraska. Now, the voice of this museum is Isaiah Yott. He has been an executive director since September of 2018. He has a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in educational administration from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So, Isaiah, we welcome you to our 1950s Fun Chat.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. You did such an excellent job of introducing me. I don't know where to start, so I guess I'll just dive right in.
Right. Just tell us about yourself and how you became qualified to be the executive director of this museum.
Sure. Well, it's a long story short kind of tale, but in an effort to sort of get to the core of that story, I grew up in southeast Nebraska in a little town of 3,000, a place called Auburn. And if you know anything about Nebraska, the state as a whole, it is farm country out here, folks. It is farm country as far as the eye can see. It is farm life. You're farming. Heck, even if you're not farming, you're probably working in an agricultural-based industry out here in Nebraska. It's just part of the roots of everything around here. But, growing up, sort of in farm country, if you will, I was exposed to a lot of water pumping windmills, which are used on farms and ranches, and 150 years ago, actually supplied water to small towns and urban areas as well. But growing up, working on farms, being a part of farm culture and farm life, windmills and working on them or learning about them or knowing what they are, it became inevitable for me. And then, as the years passed, that hobby really turned into an addiction. And then in the last, 7-8 years, I've been the executive director here at Kregel, the last original and operational windmill factory left in this country. And it's entirely preserved. So it's a neat place. But here in southeast Nebraska, there is a very reputable charitable foundation, the Richard P. and Lorraine Kimmel Charitable Foundation, which is an estate that was left by the late Kimmels. And that estate, upon their death, was turned into a very prestigious charitable organization.
Ah.
And I started working when I was working on my master's degree at University of Nebraska, Lincoln, Educational Administration. I was in my last, I'd say 8 months of the program. I was very close to graduation, but I needed a job. And I thought to myself, well, I got 2 or 3 different jobs and farm life related and whatnot. But you don't typically go to school to get an advanced degree unless you want to try to use it. So I thought to myself, well, let's find a job that would be suitable for my talents. So I started working for a guy named Ernest Wyneth, and he was the president and CEO of the Kimmel Foundation. And I was kind of his full-time right-hand executive assistant, if you will. But through spending a lot of time with him, year after year, it just turned into one day he asked me to run the Windmill Museum. And I said, well, yeah, I'd like that. That sounds great to me. So I've been director here at Kregel for about 8 years now, and windmills have been a large part of my life, obviously now, and really growing up ever since I was a little child.
Sure. Wow, what a fascinating story that you have, and how you cover really the entire state of Nebraska and even outside the borders of that state too. We were a windmill certainly touched our lives up in North Dakota, and was very important then. I think states in the Great Plains really depended on that farm feature of
one of the things about windmills, any age group, this might shock you: 40 to 50 gallons of water in one day. One cow, middle of summertime, peak heat. We're talking 95 degrees or higher. Wow. And so when you actually, with school kids, I'll have, a few thousand kids through here every year. And so I'll give them, a lecture, if you will. I'll give them a lesson on windmills and the factory here. And it's a great time. But I point that out to young people just as much as adults, because most people that are not from farm life don't really understand that one of those cows is consuming that much water in a single day in the summer.
Yes. Can a young person, a student, identify with even how much water is 40 or 50 gallons?
Usually it sounds like a lot, but when I do it here at Kregel, I have a little more style behind it. I'll kind of preface that with who drinks milk here in the crowd. And a lot of young people, they do, and some don't because of dietary things. But most of us at home, if I had to throw out an educational guess, probably buy milk in the 1 gallon jug variety. And so I usually tell young people, if you go home and save up 45 1 gallon milk jugs, obviously clean them out when you're done because they're going to smell. Put them in a big pile on the floor. And just look at it. And some of these kids, when they do it, I actually reward them with a 17-inch tall steel windmill kit that is made in Nebraska.
Cool.
And it's a model of the type of windmill that was made here at Kregel 130-something years ago. So it's the kind of thing where to get that visual in their mind, to really understand how much volume that is, the milk jug trick is really something that puts it into perspective for them.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I would say not only students would gain knowledge and understanding of that, but adults would too.
Yes.
So then this is a museum, but now go back and tell us about the business.
Right. So the museum only exists here today because this place was a fully functioning windmill factory. So they made one type of windmill here as far as manufacturing, and that windmill was an invention of their own, George and Louis Kregel, their cousins. And they start, technically, I'm looking out my south-facing window right now on this call, but across the street is technically where the business starts in 1879. And back then, they're making steel plows. For those of us that maybe have never seen one, it's the big razor knife that you would pull behind a horse back in the day to till your dirt.
Mhm.
So it was a very laborious task, and it wasn't like anything you see nowadays in the countryside with combines and modern tech out there farming those fields. But this plow making factory, if you will, sort of transforms and morphs into the Kregel Windmill Company. So it's the Kregel family, George and Lewis specifically as cousins and founders, that are running a factory that makes Eli windmills made by the Kregel family and staff. Now, the name Eli is Reverend Eli Huber, and this is George Kregel's great mentor. And so when this particular fella passes away, the Kregels, they want to pay tribute to his memory. He was a very important part of the first 2 or 3 decades of their startup. So that is why the windmills here made at Kregel are called Eli's. But the business actually ends up running 112 years, 1879 to 1991. And it's a phenomenal story. I don't care where you are in the world. If you find yourself in Southeast Nebraska, you come see me and I'll entertain you all afternoon long with the story.
You can tell that.
All right.
Right. But it's the kind of thing where in 1991, Art is 93 years old. And he is George's youngest son, takes over after dad in 1947 and runs the business until 91. So it's kind of a sad thing, but he passes away in 1991. He is 93, had that advanced age. And there's no kids or heirs in the area to sort of keep the business going, to keep the shop open, if you will. It's kind of an interesting thing. The Kregels are legendary for their experience and their craftsmanship, but their reputation is also one of very frugal, conservative leanings. He didn't even have running water in his house until a marriage proposal. He ended up marrying Louise, kind of brought that about. She wouldn't marry him until he put the running water in the house.
Good for her.
Yeah, exactly right. So he was a very old school, old world, very conservative type of person. But the place sits here, the business, the building with its couple million plus contents. And he was a bit of a pack rat, to put it gently. So there was a lot of other auxiliary contents that we had to haul out before we rediscovered the original floor plan, the machinery, the belt drive system that runs said machinery, all the inventory. I mean, it's a plethora in here. But he didn't have any kids to take it over. So a couple years go by, and in 1993, a group of people, including the Kimmel Foundation, got involved. And it was because of them and Ernie, their president at the time, their charitable contribution. It was a gift of $2 million that they gave. And that $2 million helped us build an exterior structure around the outside of the actual building that I'm sitting in right now, broadcasting to you from. So it's a shell within a building, if you will. But we're talking tar paper roof, cheaply made back, 1902. It was not the Taj Mahal back then. It was a cheap building. But the fact that it lasted 100-something years before a historic preservation, nothing short of remarkable.
I say the idea, tell me if I'm incorrect on this. Okay, windmills had been in use prior to the time that the Kregels started with their invention.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so why was it then that they felt it important to take that knowledge of a plow to the windmill business? Right.
So it's a layered story. So I'm going to give you the bare bones. We'd be here for hours instead of our broadcast. But they hit some rough years across the street before the move into the facility now that basically turns into their main windmill factory, if you will. Okay. But it's your typical Americana story of pull yourself up by the bootstraps. So first off, they had 8th grade level educations, George and Lewis. Okay. Lewis did go on to get a little more formal education, but back in the day, it was all about apprenticeship and job training. It wasn't necessarily about going to university or college. So they are very self-made people, and they're in their late 20s when they start across the street in 1879. So they weren't exactly older. They were very start-out age. So they have some good years. They have some lean years. They have some even leaner years. And that is what prompts them to canvass the community. And we're talking everybody within 100 miles in any direction. I mean, what do you guys need? What could our shop, our business provide, wood or metal related? We have a forge as well that maybe we're not providing. And the thing that was not in this area back then in a big way was a windmill manufacturing facility sort of close by.
Okay.
So they worked on windmills. Making them was just a short trip away. So they take a few months, they dabble with some design concepts, and what they end up turning out is the motor of an Eli windmill, C-knuckle joint, but they invent their own windmill.
Okay. And this wheel is made of metal, correct? Their windmill?
Yeah, so the one behind me here over my shoulder is a replica made to scale. It is 10-foot diameter, straight across.
10-foot diameter, okay.
And so it's a lot bigger when you're standing here in my facility than, we're just talking 10 foot in our mind. But wooden windmills show up first. Okay. We get steel windmills later on. I love that it's a 1950s era fun chat because the 50s were a very historic time, both good and bad, for windmill manufacturing and some other things windmill related. So the idea here with, the 1950s period is that you have water pumping windmills, mills that pump water out of the ground at a farm level or a ranch level.
Yes.
You also have wind chargers, which is a little miniaturized fan-looking thing that is usually attached to the top of your farmhouse or your barn or a corner. And that would actually be connected to a DC battery. And that would run as the wind blew, and it would charge that battery. It would make electrical power. One of the stories, that I always heard from my grandparents was how a wind charger would charge up the battery. Yeah. And then you come in at night and it was, do you want the light bulb going for X amount of time until the battery's dead before, sort of the more modern electrical that we're used to? Or do you want to run a radio on the battery? And because, as a farmer, getting the news and the crop reports and the weather of the day, it's very, go ask any farmer, they'll tell you. But
it's kind of like a farmer builds a nice barn before the house.
That's right. So the idea with, to get back to your point of, were they steel, were they wood? What does wind power look like then and in 1950 and before? Windmills actually are invented by railroad engineers in this country. A lot of people don't realize that. They think it's a mechanically inclined person. They think it's a farmer, perhaps someone who's out there in the field all day. Who better to come up with that intellect? But it is, thank you very much. I actually have a couple guests in my museum walking through right now. But it's the kind of thing where Daniel Halliday is a passenger on an early steam train. We're talking the earliest ones, okay? And they could only they could only travel so far without the boiler, the conducer element in that. It could blow like a bomb, and that would be bad. So they could travel so far, they had to stop, they had to let the engine cool. They would stop by the good old-fashioned handle pump. And so 20 or 30 railroad engineers would get out. They would go take shifts at this pump. They'd go throw water in the boiler. People would get off the train and stretch their legs. And when it was all ready to go, load back up, we're on our way. But it's Daniel Halliday that is the guy that starts making them in factories first, because railroad engineers, we're not even for sure who. They start showing up along the rail line. And Halliday's riding in a train car. He sees them and he thinks, I own 4 factories in Illinois. What if I created my own windmill design manufacture them out of my facilities. My customer is everybody in the middle of nowhere, which is everybody back then.
Mm-hmm.
And it made him very, very wealthy within a matter of, we're talking 2-3 years. I mean, it was very, very wealthy. And then you get windmill manufacturing, which is a few hundred companies making windmills at a certain point in time at its peak, because of this sort of, it's like the automobile industry. Once 4 or 5 companies are doing it successfully, boom, you got 300 something doing it in the next chunk of years.
Mm-hmm.
So they start as wood, they evolve into steel. And my disclaimer is the white ones are not windmills. Those are turbines. A lot of people think that the big, tall, 350-foot fan-looking structures are modern windmills. No, those are modern turbines, and those make electrical power using the wind. They do not pump water out of the ground.
Okay.
So
Right.
just from an educational standpoint, for our viewers, that is something to know, because you'd be shocked. And there's no, I'm not making fun of anybody. It's just something that is not, it's a misconception out there.
Sure, sure. Well, with the, I noticed in the background then that the wheel is white with red trim.
Yeah.
Is that the signature color pattern of a Kregel windmill?
It is not. That's a signature color pattern of what a Kregel wooden version could have been.
Ooh.
They actually did paint them red and white, but a lot of the other ones that they made, not necessarily Kregel, they were more of a 2, 3, 4 colors. That's it. But other companies, you know, they might have a dozen different color schemes to choose from. Usually it's what we call a double. So in this case, it's red and white, but oftentimes other manufacturers, Flint and Walling, Challenge, Dempster, Air Motor starts in 1888. They're comparable to the Kregel story here in 1879 as far as age. They would be using blue and green, red and yellow. White was always a combination of, they might do just the rim.
Okay.
See how just the rim's red?
Mm-hmm.
So they were a thing of beauty and art just as much as a water pumping farm machine. If you
Especially when they're twirling in the wind. Wouldn't that be gorgeous?
Nowadays, my position at Kregel full time here as director, I live a very charmed career. I get to teach about windmills. I get to meet people from all over the country and all over the world. You'd be shocked at our international visitors. If you go to Australia, go outside of the touristy stuff. And if you go into the backcountry, it kind of looks like the Midwest out here. They're farmers out there, and they use windmills. They raise cows just like us.
Mm-hmm.
Water is very important. So windmills are many stories, not just a machine you see and symbolize with, oh, that's what it's called and that's what it does. It's like buying your first car back then. I mean, even an Eli made here at Kregel 125 years ago cost you $130. And in today's money with inflation, it's around $6,000. So, I mean, I'm a nerd for this, obviously, but windmills, with that knowledge and with the fact that we still see them out in the countryside and we see them in different shapes, I know plenty of people that collect them. Mm-hmm. I know plenty of people that are looking to get them again. I work I like to make the joke, it's like I'm a windmill broker, because I serve as a community resource here at Kregel. The knowledge that I have, the knowledge here, a lot of people visit not just to see the museum, but because they have a windmill, they want a windmill, they need help in some kind of variation with that dialogue, and you'd be shocked. I always like helping people with windmill related stuff, and I've done many of them over the last several years. Our state fairgrounds here in Nebraska has windmills because of Kregel and a project partnership that I put together for the museum. Uh-huh. We have windmills in other key locations of the state to market and promote for us. It's funny that they pump water out of the ground and they aerate and oxygenate ponds, standing waters. Nowadays, that's a story for another day, but they market for our windmill museum in other areas as well. They work like a billboard of sorts.
So when you said windmills, there are a lot of windmills on display at the Nebraska State Fair. Are any of those actually working and drawing water out of the ground?
Well, there are 5 windmills at the Nebraska State Fair. 3 are wooden, display only, and they're beautiful. Don't get me wrong; they make for one heck of a good picture as far as if you're into photography. The 2 metal ones, one is 50 foot tall, and it actually originally was a Fairbury windmill made in Fairbury, Nebraska.
Yeah.
So that is another windmill related story that is it's half good, half sad. But the half good is they made windmills. They made good windmills. They were a Nebraska based. They had one factory, so a very kind of specialty thing. They go under in 1963 though. So it's kind of a sad thing, but Kregel's close in 91. Dempster closes in 2000, and that's about an hour and a half away from here. Dempster is another name, prominent name in windmills. A lot of Dempsters out there in America still.
Well,
But there's a story behind them all.
Sure. Were there any certain changes that occurred with the operation of the windmill, or perhaps the servicing of a windmill through the 1950s?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I'm a timeline person.
Uh-huh.
So let me start you out at like the 1933 mark, okay, and work into the 50s. So in 1933, windmills have a latch on them, a brake, if you will, a lever at ground level, and it's called a brake. Uh-huh. But the idea is if you open that up, it will open the wheel of your windmill and it'll start spinning. The wheel will start spinning as it centers itself in the wind. And then when you want to shut it down, let's say bad winds, nighttime, whatever, the idea is you pull that latch down and it will close your wheel and put it parallel with your tail, the piece that sticks in the back. Okay. And that way it'll just float on top of your tower rather than just going crazy and breaking parts, which is time. Yeah.
I can recall the number of times about 9 o'clock at night in the summertime, Dad would say to either Jackie and me, go out and shut off that windmill.
Yep.
Pull a break. So that's what we did.
You know, the thing of it is I like turning it on and off. That was nothing. It was putting the oil in it where you got to climb up there, and it depends. I mean, Eli's are a older type of windmill. They are very famous. They are very efficient. They're, for being a 130 something years old, I know people today that would rather use an Eli than a modern brand new made air motor, which is also another very good mill. Mm-hmm. But the oil and the brake are really the two gotta haves as far as the windmill. The rest is just wind and the well underneath, and you got water.
Mm-hmm. So there are different types of wind machines. What is the most common one that you're speaking of that helps?
To get back to this ties right into that 1930s into the 1950s time frame, because the brake of the windmill didn't start showing up on windmills in rural America until the 30s. So by the 40s, you have that. That's great. Now, by the 50s, you have, technically it's a 40s invention, but in the 50s, it gets domesticated. And that is a electric sump pump. The ability to pull water out of the ground using an electric pump system. Mm-hmm. And that is technically World War II technology that gets domesticated after 1945 into the 50s. Mm-hmm. Now, windmills pump water out of the ground using the wind. Wind chargers make electrical power using the wind. And wind turbines are the commercial, industrial, mega-sized version of the wind chargers. So when I give some background to people, I kind of like them to understand those 3 differences and those 3 machines, because 2 make electrical power, 1 pumps water out of the ground, but inevitably you find all 3 in rural America. And so sometimes people get confused because they think that is some version of water pumping windmill rather than a wind powered farm machine. Let's call it other.
Yes.
So why do you think it's important for people to learn about windmills? So well,
that's a great question, Jackie. So I get that question a lot. And, you know, over the first few years of giving a few thousand tours, one doesn't quite know what to say because there is no right or wrong answer. But the answer that I give to that question now, as far as, one guy's opinion, just my personal opinion, and I believe it to be very powerful, as far, not my opinion, but the point that I wish to make,
Okay.
it is this. How are you going to understand where we're going and how to do that in the best possible way, not only as a society, but as a people, as a human race, okay, as our, even farm technology, anything? How are you going to understand where you're going if you don't understand where we've been? And when it's a question like that out on the farm, I mean, when you look at, I get this a lot. Well, you got a nice river over there. You got a nice pond. You got a stream or a creek. Why don't you just pull your water out of that instead of having to buy a windmill and drill a well in the ground? Well, because cows take a bath in that water. That water is dirty. Humans drink that water without boiling it or filtering it or straining it in any way that makes it, clean. You're going to get sick. And certain farm animals, if it's bad enough, it'll kill them after a few consumptions. So it's the kind of thing where you have to understand the past. You have to learn about what windmills were. They were literally a life-giving machine. It's back to the cows. 40 gallons of water in one day. How long do you think it would have taken shifts of people or families to get that water that they needed if you had 100 cows?
Yes.
You'd still be out there pumping water probably.
Isaiah, what determines the height of the tower of the windmill?
That's a very good question as well. If you ever find yourself in Kansas, viewers, and you two ladies, you'll see what I call baby windmills. They're only about 15, 20 foot tall. They're little short ones. They look like little junior windmills. And my daughter, she's 5. I go down there for windmill stuff all the time, family, travel, whatever. But they're short. And so a lot of that is because of the geography. It's flatter in Kansas as far as the land. You don't need to be 50 or 100 foot in the air to have optimal wind if you don't have mountains or rolling hills, say, on 1, 2, or 3 sides of you. It's why when you go into Arizona and Colorado come to mind. Certain parts of Arizona, very flat. Certain parts of Arizona and definitely Colorado, more mountainous. So the idea is your windmill might need to be 60 or 70 foot tall because you got mountains on 2 or 3 sides versus, say, a relatively flat plateau where 30 or 40 foot will do just fine.
Do you know of anyone having any close calls because of gusts of wind?
Wind is not, it's funny how wind is the absolute best friend of a windmill until it decides to be a strong wind.
Yes.
Not to personify it, but when the wind decides to pick up, that's when we get into it's a bit shaky because certain wind speeds can absolutely destroy wooden windmills, which are more decorative yard ornament type things now than actual, they're out there pumping water in service. Steel windmills, on the other hand, that's the punchline of why we moved into steel as far as manufacturing windmills. They last decades longer. They're far more durable. And even in some of the worst windstorms, we're talking 90 or 100 mile an hour winds. If that windmill is closed, if it's locked, if it's not actually active, it will survive that over decades. The trick is you got to watch your weather. Because I would say, 50 mile an hour winds, a windmill will work. It's not optimal. And it puts a lot of pressure on different parts. And it's just like your car. You wouldn't let your car run at night while you're sleeping because it's hard on it and it's a waste of gas. But it's the same thing with a windmill. Some farmers I know, some of us, you go run them 2-3 weeks at a time. You got to shut them off for that time. But what if you have cows? So you need water reservoirs, you need cattle tanks, you need maybe you have one well that's a windmill, one well that's solar, one well that's an electric water pump. You, as a farmer, you have to think that way. You have to think about things like this. Because if not, your cows, your crops, and not you, but things are dying and that's your money out there. That's your livelihood.
Yes, yes. How do you determine the size of the windmill wheel?
The wheel. So It's a little more scientific, but the standard that most people are going to use as far as, do I need a small one? Do I need a big one? Do I need a medium one? The one behind me, it's a 10-foot wide diameter. 10 is a very common size in the Midwest, including your state, North Dakota there. So it's the kind of thing where they made them as small as a 6-foot diameter, so slightly smaller than the one behind me. But they also made them as big as 30 foot wide.
Wow.
So that would be like 3 of these long, 3 of them tall, draw a circle around it, boom, big wheel.
Uh-huh.
But that was more of a railroad mill, because you're pumping water into, say, like a water tower next to the train stop.
Huh.
But wheel size also plays a role when it comes to how many times that wheel will turn. And in the world of windmills or hydrology, when you're working with groundwater, when you're trying to pull water out of the ground for use, the idea on a windmill is gallons per hour is how we kind of measure some of this. How many gallons of water per hour are we pumping up with that windmill? But that translates to optimal wind, slow wind, or size of the wheel, size of the tower. So a bigger wheel can actually capture more face space on its structure,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
which means that it will turn more times. In theory, wind speed plays a role in this, but on average, in theory, in 1 hour. More turns or revolutions means more water. But you need to balance that with, well, if your wheel is turning 2 or 3 times more than the other guy's or person's windmill, does that mean it wears out faster? What is that? So as far as your design of the machine, you got every windmill company, every sort of Tom, Dick, and Harry, as they used to say. Back in the day, ours is an oil bath. Ours is more gallons in an hour. Ours is you only have to do the oil once a year. Ours is cheap and all of that the other guy has. It was just like trying to buy a car. There was a pitch, there was a style, and there was a purpose to why did you buy a Flint and Walling versus a Red Star? What makes an air motor better than a Dempster? And and it's just like cars too. I mean, there's the manufacturer, then there's the different models that they make. And that's the same thing with windmills. So you had Kregels making Eli, one kind, but most of the other manufacturers, they might do water pumps and make Flint and Walling, or they might make Iron Crown, or they might make Saffron Windmills was another name of a company. So there's all these names, there's all these histories, there's a bigger history, but the lessons that we learn from it, not just wind power, are farm lessons. They're practical lessons. They're lessons of how to be out there in the middle of nowhere. Let's call it rural America in this case. And you need water, so you got to turn your windmill on, or your windmill's broke. How are you going to get that fixed? And so that's the trick with being a farmer and a windmill person who uses windmills still to pump water, maybe not just decorative or collection. Some
of those towers are 3-legged and some of them are 4-legged. What determines that?
Get that question all the time. So it's a little less glamorous than people think as far as a 3-legged versus a 4-legged tower. But the bottom line is 3-legged towers are typically a little bit rarer in the Midwest than they are, say, down south when you go to some of those states just right along the coast there. But that doesn't mean to say if you have a 3-legged tower, it's worth a mountain of money. It might be worth a moderate amount, but certain manufacturers made them in a certain way. Certain manufacturers only made so many of them. Certain manufacturers made those 3-legged towers and other towers. They gave them the ability to tip down. And so they're called collapsible towers. Now those are actually relatively rare. If you have a collapsible tower, you need to be calling me and sending me some photos, and I'm going to want to see that quick, fast, and in a hurry to try to help you save it, or if you wanted to get rid of it, get it into the hands of someone who will give it new life.
So Kregel made the wheels and the towers.
Kregel made every single piece of an Eli windmill except for the 2 heavy cast iron pieces on the motor. And you'll see it on the stand over there. They look like C's. See how they're C-shaped? Now, that was actually made down the street here in Nebraska City at King Drill Manufacturing, which was a very large foundry facility well over 100 years ago in the town.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they don't exist today, but those two pieces are made down the street. They are literally, transported up the street. Central Avenue is the name of the street out here, even back then. And then everything else, your tower, your blades, your wheel, the back piece that says Eli, we call that a tail, or more technically, it's a vane. But for all you windmill hardcore people out there, it's a vane.
A vane, yes.
Yeah, but it's a very handmade, customized job. People want to, where's the blueprint? Where's the instructionals on how to make these Elis? Right here. This is how they did it back in the day.
Yes.
And because when you're making these, day in and day out, I mean, there really isn't a 1 through 10 checklist. It's, exactly what comes next. You know what size the holes need to be drilled for this. You know that these pieces need to be cut this long. And before you know it, it's like Legos. When you put it together, you got a windmill.
Whew, you have brought us through so much information about the windmill and the Kregel windmills. The whole story is fascinating. Isaiah, we're at the end of our chat. This has been phenomenal. It's gone quickly. Thank you so much for sharing this information with us. And we hope that people will journey to Nebraska City, Nebraska to view the Kregel Windmill Museum.
I'm going to scroll the camera over here. It's not the best shot, but it does give you an idea. I mean, everywhere you go in my museum, there's something to see. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of the front door over here. Even the cash register, you probably can't see it all that well. Right there. Behind the wheel there.
Yes.
It is from a lube and service shop that started in this town, which was started by yet another Kregel. And that Kregel was the oldest son of George, one of the two founders of the windmill factory. So it was Dad's seed money that helped Robert's car shop, lube shop, service shop get off its feet. Windmill money funds car money. I love that.
So are there any Kregels living in the area yet?
Well, most of the Kregels that are still around, there are a couple hours east of here, across the river in Iowa, actually. Mm-hmm. And there's a handful. There's a few others scattered throughout the country, but they are aware of what we do. And they were a few of them that were direct inheritors of the business when Art died. Mm-hmm. That story basically is they work with a local group of people, and they turn over the rights to this place rather than having an auction and selling it and dozing it. Maybe it's another gas station out here or something. But that is another integral part of the heirs really wished it to be saved rather than they didn't want to monetize the contents.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. Well, we thank you so much for your time, and viewers, tell your friends, even your relatives, about this 1950s fun chat, because you'll be in for a nugget of 1950s history. So till next time, toodaloo.
Bye-bye.